What is cultural tourism? The World Tourism Organization (WTO) 1985 broadly defined cultural tourism as the movement of persons who satisfy the human need for diversity, tending to raise the cultural levels of individuals and giving rise to new knowledge, experience, and encounters. Tourism industry is a platform that gives opportunity to others to learn and experience about the way other people live, about their society and their tradition. Malaysia's diverse culture, which represent colorful heritage such as have different local knowledge ranging from its architecture, handicraft, traditional attire, music, and dance.
Types of cultural tourism. There are many types of cultural in Malaysia, such as indigenous cultural and historical cultural. Indigenous cultural is known as Orang Asli, a community of Peninsular Malaysia. This community are live in a village and live inside the jungle. Therefore, the uniqueness of culture is they are still practicing in semi-nomadic lifestyle and tradition. Second, historical culture. It's synonym with history place either in Malaysia or foreign country. Usually, not only an older generation will love this kind of culture, but the younger generation too. For the example, the Puerto de Santiago in Malacca was put in year 1511 by Portuguese and nowadays become a place that must visited in Malacca because of the history and their own uniqueness. Next is activities in cultural tourism. Firstly is traditional dance. Traditional dance usually during event or program by showing their culture to its audience with traditional attire. Second is religious activity. Malaysia rich with different ethnic groups and many types of religions, such as Malay having its celebration by visiting and program session to its close contact, like friends, family, and neighbor. For Chinese, celebrate Lantern Festival and New Year celebration. And Indian, celebrate Thaipusam celebration. In Malaysia, this celebration usually located at Batu Cave Selangor, which is the biggest and the famous temple in Malaysia. Also open either for foreign or local tourists to show and promote their culture towards others.
Malaysia is widely productive with aesthetic culture. On this basis, the economic impact does come from the cultural tourism attraction by triggering the enhancement of revenue from mass currency exchange between countries. Besides, from cultural tourism, the product could impact with the need of employment from the locals. Thus, it will open job opportunities for them, and from it, the number of employment rate will subsequently increase. Interestingly, when it comes to dealing with the cultural sector, recruiting locals is the finest idea. Cultural tourism brings the interaction between locals and international tourists. From the interaction, we could understand each other's perspective through cultural exchange. This could happen through an organized event or any form of interaction at cultural tourism site. The advantages from the consequences is we could educate the society and strengthen the relationship between locals and tourists. Unfortunately, the correlation of culture could lead into threat to the other community when the culture does not suit to the other. The complex the culture, the hard for its people to compromise. it becomes a sensitive subject when dealing with cultural differentiation that compromise separate perspective, background, and moral values. Environmental outcomes from cultural tourism filled with advantage and disadvantage. The advantage of cultural tourism towards environmental impact is a closure towards ecotourism, which is slightly involved with environmental exploitation. To preserve cultural tourism, we do not need a mass destruction to build infrastructure, but in fact, we can improve it by develop it through refurbishing and restoration to bring the culture to the actual old nature. Plus, it will give the visitors the experience to feel the heritage vibration like it was. However, the disadvantage comes into reality when there are immense of tourists carelessly polluted the cultural site. This could happen without firm enforcement and regulations from the authorities or government. To handle a mass of visitors need a proper management control because tourists come from many different backgrounds. Some unsophisticated tourists could carelessly littering and vandalizing the site, hence ruining the image of the site.
Moving on to issues and challenges of cultural tourism. First is the tourism operator. Tourism operators are currently having limitation in accessing to sites and promoting their products. This is because cultural tourism mostly depends on strong seasonal variation such as holiday and yearly events. Unfortunately, tourism operators can sometimes experience difficulty to gain the size of investment required and raising finance in order to gain competitive advantage on international market. Second is heritage manager. Heritage managers have important duty to protect and conserve cultural tourism under their control. The issue can be raised while making the decision between their need to protect the heritage site and at the same time to provide a public access for the tourists. This is because not all heritage site is suitable for public access and may have to be restricted due to the fragility of the site, sensitivity regarding the site information, and many more. Third is local community. Local community can also become a challenge for the development of cultural tourism. The reason because they keen to protect their privacy of the heritage site from tourism development. In Malaysia, the presence of multicultural communities can sometimes make it difficult for tourism planners and managers to decide which cultural heritage need to be promoted. Because once there were issues arise where Chinese and Indian community have felt that their cultural heritage are not well represented and promoted by the government. Another issues and challenges are managing cultural heritage asset in terms of funding and sufficient financial support. Managing cultural heritage assets such as heritage building is considered as expensive and costly to some people, and is normally funded by government or private institution. For example, the demolition of book house that features classical European architecture on Jalan Ampang, Kuala Lumpur. According to the Culture, Arts and Heritage Minister, the cost of rehabilitating book house is high, and it has to be demolished for not registered as a heritage building by the government. Fifth issue is cultural heritage resources. As a cultural heritage area, conservation is needed. But based on observation in few areas in Malaysia, most of the cultural heritage resources, especially buildings, are underutilization. If the resources were managed poorly and lack of maintenance, it will cause buildings and monuments to decay.
As a conclusion, a system or management need to develop into consideration on every issues and challenge to maintain and preserve the resources and asset of cultural heritage in Malaysia. Cultural tourism are very important to people's identity, self-respect, and dignity, and also it's bring pride to local communities and at the same time create culture bondage and understanding between host and guest communities. Thank you.